Hello everyone, this is Bobbin Threadbare, and welcome to L.A. Noire. From what I understand, this game has something of a mixed reputation, much like BioShock Infinite does, but for different reasons. I mean, the storyline isn't exactly reaching further than it can grasp. And it has a lot of interesting attention to detail, and I gotta sign in here, hang on. Yeah, you're not gonna see my account details. Anyway, but yeah, mostly it's the technology that's reaching beyond its grasp. I mean, it uses this ability, this sort of hundreds of cameras to look at a guy's face thing, and yeah, as such, it's got extremely accurate facial motion capture, almost like rotoscoping, 3D rotoscoping.
A city on the verge of greatness. A new type of city, based not on the man, but on the automobile. The car. The symbol of freedom and vitality. Where every man can own his own home, and have room to breathe, and not be overlooked by his neighbors.
Also, there's complaints the game is too colorful, but there is a black and white mode.
A city where a man's home is his castle. A quarter acre of the dream made possible by victory.
So there's really no room to complain on that front.
A city of opportunists. A city of dreams, where Hollywood will shape the thoughts and desires of the entire planet. A city of pioneers. A city of dreamers. A city of undercurrents, where not everything is as it seems. A 20th century city that will become a model for the world. A city that has no boundaries, that will stretch as far as the eye can see.
A city of urban sprawl.
In the Marine Corps, you deal with the chain of command. Mistakes get made, but you deal with them. You know what you're fighting for and that you're on the same team. But dealing with corruption is like chasing shadows. You never know whether the guy you're talking to is on the pad, or whether it's your partner, or maybe even the watch commander. So who do you trust, Cole? I made up my mind a long time ago.
KGBL calling caller 14 Adam. 14 Adam, come in.
Go ahead, KGPL.
14 Adam, see the detective, an ambulance shooting at 6th and Industrial Street. Unit 16 William requests uniform assistance for an evidence search. 14 Adam, code 2.
Roger, 14 Adam en route.
Here we go again. They don't request uniforms for an evidence search unless there's some kind of catch. Ever the optimist, from the beam of sunshine himself.
Floyd Rose, homicide. You might back up?
Yes, sir. Phelps and Dunn, Wilshire Division.
We had a shooting took place down this alleyway. We have the Vic, Scooter Payton, a Negro male bagged up and on his way to Central Morgue. Witness says a tall white guy, our shooter, put 2 in the Vic's head and then threw his piece. I need you guys to try and recover the gat.
You want us to look anywhere in particular?
Give it your best shot, guys. The dead guy's a lowlife. I'm not expecting any miracles here.
And if we recover the weapon?
Bag it and return it to technical services.
You hurry it up, Floyd. We
I'm
got
outta
places
here.
to be.
Happy hunting.
This is a fist hump. Just going through the motions.
Probably right. Let's just get it over and done.
All right, have it your way. We'll search right up to the back wall. If you still don't come up with anything, come find me and we'll talk it out. Two heads are always better than one.
So what next?
Have a good look around. It could be anywhere.
Aha! This looks like a clue.
Look at this
Doesn't
junk.
appear to be connected.
I guess not. You can wander up to a lot of different items, and not all of them are going to be relevant, but at least Cole will tell you if that's the case.
It's not my job to pick through other people's trash.
There are also these papers scattered around.
Jesus. Cole, come take a look at this.
I'm sorry I can't. I'm about to have a flashback. Or flash forward.
Dr. Fontaine, could I have a word?
Of course, young man.
I really enjoyed your lecture, Doctor. Psychiatry seems to have a tremendous amount to offer.
Why, thank you. I'm always happy to receive acknowledgement for my work. The mind is the last great mystery in medicine. Are you thinking of specializing, Mr.
Sheldon, or Courtney Sheldon. I'm only in second year, Doctor. They fast-tracked me a year because of my experience during the war.
Ah,
That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Battle fatigue and collapse under duress. Can it be helped?
I would say yes, given the right set of circumstances. Trauma forces the mind to close down, retreat in on itself. We try to find ways to unlock the mind again through a combination of therapy and drug treatment. Hypnosis and therapy are powerful tools in the right hands, Sheldon.
I've been to visit some of the guys at the VA hospital. A good friend of mine, he's so far away. It's like he's wandering
You
around.
went through a lot together.
Yes, Doctor.
Give me his details and I'll make a prognosis. I have a number of clinics in Los Angeles, Courtney Sheldon, and your penance, for your friend's help, is to come and work at one of them in your spare time, with what little spare time a medical student has. Is that a deal?
Is it ever? I can't thank you enough.
I'm not promising a cure, Courtney. I want you to remember that. Every physician has patients that he cannot hope to cure, for whom he can only smooth the path to death.
Well, that seems like a trustworthy guy. He just oozes confidence and well-being, doesn't he?
What have you got, Phelps? Anything?
Well, I've got what's either a flash forward, a meanwhile, or a flashback. They aren't completely connected in terms of timeline.
I tell you, I'm jinxed. I always get landed with this crap.
That's just your confirmation bias talking. Everything else is just boring, so you remember this stuff.
We're never gonna find it. It's a waste of time.
Shooter put him up against the wall and blew his brains out.
Hell of a way to go.
Doesn't really matter how you go once you're gone.
Don't get all deep on me, Phelps.
Yeah, that's a look option that was made for a joystick.
Ralph, there's something on the rooftop.
How the hell did you see that?
A reflection in the window. Looks like it might be our weapon. I'm gonna see if I can find a way up there.
All right, don't hurt yourself. The gun's up on the roof, right? So we need to find a way up.
They're always clearly marked in yellow, so they're fairly easy to find when you find a ladder or a pipe like that. Seems like an odd angle, though, doesn't it? For the reflection.
What kind of chumps do these homicide guys think
Smith
we
&
are?
Wesson, serial S71893.
Luckily, you don't have to write that down.
2 rounds fired. And instead of dropping it down a drain, our shooter hoists it up here. Interesting guy.
Wonder why he used 2 bullets on an execution.
We should follow up on this now, before the perp tries to leave town.
We have the gun, Cole. Let's take it back to Central. We could get a commendation.
Could show some initiative, Ralph, and see if we can come up with an owner.
That's a long shot, Cole.
It's a pretty fancy gun. You know a local gun store?
Sure. There's a place a couple of blocks from here.
Are you sure about this? It's not really our gig.
No harm in doing some digging. The suits didn't seem to give much of a damn.
Such a little Boy Scout, Cole. You can't wait to get out of that uniform, can you?
You'd rather round up drunks and help old ladies across the road?
I'd rather get through the day without the captain's foot up my ass.
It'll be fine, Ralph. You worry too much.
Yeah, back in the day when you had bench front seats and scooching over like that actually was reasonable. If I'm driving a little crazy, it's mostly just to show off. Not everybody's good at the sort of GTA driving, but I kind of am.
You're gonna wreck the car!
Well, mostly. Of course, I don't have to do handbrake turns each time. That's just for fun.
It's the next right.
Also, that's your ask your partner for directions button.
Take the next right.
Since you don't have a trail in the mini-map, just asking your partner for directions is the next best thing.
Take the next left.
Also, they have a lot of unique sound clips,
Turn
so
left
I'm
up
showing
ahead.
that off too.
Next left.
Seems to be sort of wondering what to do with his hands there.
Officers Phelps and Dunn. Can you tell us anything about this gun?
Smith & Wesson, Model 27, registered Magnum. Chambered for .357, nickel-plated with pearl grips. Same gun used by General Patton.
You're not suggesting he's the owner.
No, I'm not.
You seem to know a lot about the weapon.
I ought to. I sold it. You know, this piece will stop a rhino. These babies are only available special order. Here's my Smith & Wesson order book.
You mind if I take a look?
Be my guest. This is about something bad, right?
Model 27 with pearl grips, Cole. You see it on there?
That's some awfully bad gun discipline from a gun store owner there. But yeah, the idea here is to put your finger over the thing, tap it.
We're in luck. Errol Schroeder, 203 South Gless Street. Ordered the gun in February '46. Thanks, you've been a big help.
Anytime. Always happy to help out the LAPD.
Do we call it in?
Let's see if he's at home. Owning the gun doesn't prove he pulled the trigger.
Okay. In for a penny, in for a pound. Lead the way, Gunga Din.
Gunga Din was a poem by Rudyard Kipling, and more to the point, a 1939 movie about an enthusiastic Indian water carrier who really wanted to be a soldier for the British Army.
Now that wasn't so hard, was it? Just because we're in... That's coming out of your wages, not mine!
Don't worry, he'll
Go straight.
start up again.
Now that wasn't so hard, was it? Just because we're in uniform doesn't mean we can't use our initiative.
I guess so. Seems a little too good to be true. One-of-a-kind murder weapon bought locally using a real name. If Schroeder's our shooter, he's no criminal mastermind.
Most of them aren't. That's why they get caught. 2 out of every 3 crimes are done on impulse.
Another fact from the Phelps Encyclopedia of Thin Air. You really are full of it.
Go straight over. Go straight. Take this left.
Yeah, see? Didn't hit anything.
Stop just ahead.
Advice?
We need Schroeder's apartment number.
Well, that's easy enough to find. Just gotta, look both ways before crossing the street. Of course, I should probably not be jaywalking too, but whatever. We're cops. Our cars technically don't count as motor vehicles. We're not in the same category anyway.
Schroeder, apartment 2.
What do you guys want?
I'm Officer Cole Phelps. This is Officer Dunn, Wilshire Division. You're the owner of a Smith & Wesson Model 27, nickel-plated with pearl grips?
I might be. What of it?
Then you'll be surprised to know that Scooter Payton was murdered tonight with your gun.
You're out of your mind. Scooter? He works for me. I have that gun here in my drawer. What the fuck is going on here?
You're under arrest, Schroeder. Cuff him, Ralph.
No way. You're not taking me down for this. You ready, tough guy? Huh?
And this is me remembering how to use the brawl controls.
That was a very bad move, Schroeder.
Now I've got it. It's really easy once you know which buttons are which.
Ralph, you all right?
I'm fine. I hardly felt it. He's lucky he caught me off guard.
Keep an eye on him, Ralph. I'm gonna take a look around. List of names and a series of numbers. Floyd Rose's name is in this book.
That would be the detective we talked to earlier.
Phelps, we can come out of this all bright and shiny with a commendation. Or stick our schlongs in a hornet's nest. Call it in, partner. And leave the book where you found it.
The implication being that Floyd Rose killed that man with this guy's gun.
Officer Phelps, badge 1247, requesting.
And he got away with it because he's a detective. Now these are definitely flashbacks.
You dumb fucking sons of bitches, get in this line now before I lose my temper.
Excuse me, Sergeant, but...
Excuse me? Fuck you. You say another word and I'll break your fucking head and have you in the brig.
Some of us are here for...
I know why you're here, asswipe. I'm having a bad day, Private. Some people don't seem to want to get on this bus.
I didn't ask for your help.
He didn't ask for your help. Can you believe this guy? Who are you two? Abbott and Costello?
We're here for OCS, Sergeant.
So it's the three fucking stooges and you're here for OCS. God help this fucking country and the USMC. The Japanese will do the world a favor and kill you quickly. All three of you are on report. What are your fucking names?
Phelps.
Kelso.
Merrill.
Any other gentlemen for OCS? OCS is at Elliott. You take the Camp Elliott bus over there. This bus is for MCRD. This bus is for men who want to fight.
OCS is Officer Candidate School, and MCRD is a recruit camp near San Diego. Or San Francisco. San Francisco.
Well, you picked the right place, Cole. A city that needed an honest cop like a thirsty man needed water. You'd heard the stories, but you weren't interested. You were here to fight the good fight, solve cases, right wrongs. The force is like politics. There's no sitting on the fence. You have to choose sides. A brown paper envelope or a Greyhound ticket to Palookaville. It could only ever end one way.
All units to 211 in progress and shots fired at Westlake Savings and Loan, 1415 West 3rd Street. Unit to handle identified, code 3.
We'll take that. It's only a couple blocks from here.
14 Adam calling KGPL. We'll handle the 211.
Roger that, 14 Adam. Be advised suspects are armed and dangerous.
Roger, KGPL. 14 Adam en route.
So yeah, 2 of the patrol desk cases are really short, so I'm wrapping them into the 2 longer ones. And this is actually a fairly short drive. It can kind of seem long, but you've only got the one right turn there.
Make it quick, you guys. The cops are here. We gotta move it.
And now we're going to have the combat tutorial. Complete with shotgun.
Try for the front door. Keep your goddamn head down. Use the cover, Phelps.
By the way, you can recover your hat when it gets shot off.
Backup will be here soon.
I'll show that off at some point.
Why is nobody covering me? LAPD, put down your weapons. The bank is surrounded.
Yeah, I like the idea that Cole was only saying something to distract them.
Stay down.
Also, shotguns are very satisfyingly accurate, even at medium ranges.
That's it? We got them all? I think we got them, Cole. Should be all clear. Lieutenant Hopkins says anytime you reach for the shotguns, you're either going to end up dead or wearing a citation. So I guess...
It's okay, Ralph. You did well in there. I'm glad you had my back. Man couldn't ask for a better partner.
Just one more thing to look at. The flashbacks won't be coming quite as frequently later on, by the way.
This kind of opportunity comes along once in a lifetime, Hank. I have to grasp it.
You have to survive at first, Cole. Here are the veterans. The Japs love to shoot officers.
If I can make a name for myself in this war, my future...
Thinking of taking on a company of the Emperor's finest single-handed? You don't seem the Sergeant York type to me.
When I need your opinion, Kelso, I'll ask for it.
They talk about officers like you in boot camp, Cole. They call it the Custer Syndrome. Guys who go around dreaming of fame and glory and getting all of their men killed in the process.
Our duty is to lead, Kelso.
And their duty is to die for your wonderful future?
Sergeant York was a 1941 movie about a World War I soldier who held off a German regiment for quite a while. Now, welcome everyone to the Let's Play where every corner is Film Corner. For each episode of LA Noire, I'm going to be featuring a different classic film which has some ties to noir or to the noir era of Hollywood. In fact, let's just get rid of that Film Corner title. There, go on, get out. And instead, I'll use the 4 corners to represent the 4 criteria I'm using to select my chosen films. First, the film should be noir or neo-noir. Second, the film should feature Los Angeles crime and punishment in some way. Third, the film should be a production from the original noir era, so roughly between 1930 and 1960. Or fourth, the film should be a period piece which takes place in Los Angeles during that same period. All of the films I've chosen fulfill at least one of these criteria, and thanks to those last 2, this is probably the last time you'll ever see all 4 corners lit up at once. Now, instead of kicking things off with a noir classic, we'll be doing that next week. I'm going to be covering a work that only fulfills one corner, the LA Crime and Punishment corner, which, properly speaking, isn't even a film to begin with. I'm going to be starting with a show, Columbo. Of course, I do have a reason for kicking things off like this, but if you want to hear why, you'll have to wait until the end of the review. The story about the story. Columbo began when William Link and Richard Levinson came up with a brilliant idea. What if there were a whodunit detective series that showed the murder first? What if the audience gets to know everything, including the murderer, the motive, and the method, and we depict this murder so thoroughly that often enough the title character doesn't show up until the second third of the episode? What if we make a mystery show with no mystery? A show which is more about how the detective nails the perpetrator rather than how he figures out who the perp even is. what you get is a show called Columbo, starring Peter Falk as the title character. As I've just said, Columbo relies on a format which was never seen before and is rarely seen even now. The first thing the audience sees is the murder and the events which lead up to it. And for the most part, Lieutenant Columbo doesn't show up until after someone calls the police. From this point, the show usually follows a set formula. With few exceptions, Columbo first becomes suspicious of the actual perpetrator thanks to some minor discrepancy, and also thanks to the fact that the show doesn't need to be coy about who the real murderer is. And for the rest of the episode, the lieutenant slowly starts to put together a case based on circumstantial evidence and witness statements, which he uses to home in on the one bit of hard evidence he needs to get a conviction. Part of the way he does this is by intentionally playing up his unassuming and rather irritating persona so that the suspect will give up information without remembering to call his or her lawyer first to set up an interview. If they did that, Columbo wouldn't be able to solve half his cases, which is why he pretends he's just doing his job and not hounding them for information. And even after the suspect realizes that he's onto them, they're usually too irritated to remember their lawyer. That said, the show wasn't afraid to play with this formula, even starting with the first season. In the second real episode, for instance, you get to see Columbo doing his thing with the wrong suspect. And so you also see what happens when someone shuts him down with an ironclad alibi. At one point, he goes after the head of a military academy who pretty much refuses to give him anything, so he gets his evidence by canvassing the students instead. On another occasion, he goes after an actress who murdered her husband, but he doesn't arrest her in the end because she's terminally ill, she doesn't remember that she killed him, and her platonic lover takes the fall just long enough to keep her out of prison until she can die peacefully. In one of the later episodes, which they made after the series proper ended, Columbo winds up in charge of a manhunt after an insane stalker abducts his niece. Another unique feature of Columbo is its length. With an hour-and-a-half time slot, every episode of Columbo is feature length. Peter Falk apparently insisted on this since he was a film actor and not one to be tied down to a weekly schedule, and so NBC put together a compromise. A weekend mystery movie slot which rotated through 4 shows: Columbo, McCloud, Heck Ramsey, and McMillan and Wife. This also gave the show a much bigger budget than normal, something you can see in the ritzy and episodically unique settings. There's a theory that Columbo has some classist undertones, what with the protagonist being a working-class slob going up against a bunch of wealthy industrialists, celebrities, and business elites, and there's definitely something to that argument. But I don't think it was intentional so much as it was the producers making full use of that budget. That and working-class murderers tend to be either professionals Columbo wouldn't be able to catch, or idiots Columbo would catch immediately. The story. Since every episode is feature-length, I'll be spotlighting just one. The first true episode, after the 2 pilots, Murder by the Book, which was guest-directed by a certain new Hollywood up-and-comer you might have heard of, Steven Spielberg. You can tell we're in for a real treat regarding the cinematography right from the first shot, which starts out as a long shot of a car heading down the street, but then zooms out to show that we're in the office of a writer. The only thing we hear throughout the first couple minutes is his typewriter as he works on his newest novel. Eventually, the car we saw parks in a garage, and the driver pulls a revolver out of the glove compartment, opening the cylinder to show that it's unloaded. When he then goes up to the writer's office and points it at him, the writer responds by bursting into laughter. As it turns out, the 2 are a mystery writing team, and they have a very strange sense of humor. The writer's name is James Ferris, and the driver's name is Ken Franklin, and between them, they've put out 15 books and sold 50 million copies about Mrs. Melville, who seems to be a very murder-she-wrote sort of sleuth based on that portrait in the back. Ken has stopped by because he wants to make amends for shouting at Jim last night, when Jim said he was going to move on from Melville once their current book is done. As such, Ken offers up some champagne, establishes the plot some, and then convinces Jim to come with him to his lakeside cabin outside San Diego. On his way out, Ken also gets Jim to handle a certain paper, and then heads back up to the office. Supposedly, he's going up to retrieve his lighter, but actually, he's using the time to trash the office, now that everyone's gone, and then plant the paper in one of the drawers. Once they reach the lake, Ken stops by the convenience store and both flirts with the owner and calls Jim's wife to establish his alibi. Finally, Ken gets Jim to call his wife Joanna at the cabin to tell her he's at the office, and even as Jim's still on the phone, Ken shoots him dead. Some hours later, the police are ransacking the office, and Joanna is freaking out since the door was locked and there's no body or trace of blood anywhere. Columbo makes his first appearance as he's trying to use a broken drinking fountain, and when he sees how frazzled she is, he decides to take her home and make her an omelet. During the omelet scene, Joanna explains that Ken didn't actually do any of the writing. Instead, he handled the publicity, the talk shows, book signings, and movie deals, and as such, Ken has a lot to lose from ending the Melville series. Joanna also mentions that Jim had a habit of writing story ideas on random scraps of paper. Later, Ken shows up at the house and starts criticizing Columbo for not being as good as Mrs. Melville. He also tells Columbo that Jim was obviously murdered by a professional, and he takes him back to the office and shows him the earlier paper as proof. The paper contains a list of names of high-profile organized crime bosses, and Ken insists that one of them must have arranged for Jim's death since he was supposedly planning to write an exposé. For his part, Columbo notices two discrepancies. First, a professional killer wouldn't have bothered to hide the body, and second, the paper was folded lengthwise, like it was in someone's pocket, despite how it supposedly wouldn't have left the room. Ken comes up with an excuse for the second point and then happily hands Columbo a few Melville books as he leaves. Except, of course, Columbo doesn't leave. Instead, he says his trademark "one more thing" and asks Ken why he drove up from San Diego instead of using a plane. All Ken can say in response is that people don't think straight under stress, an excuse which also shows up a lot in Columbo episodes. Needless to say, Columbo now has a primary suspect. When Ken gets home, he dumps Jim's body on his lawn and calls Columbo, stating it was already there when he arrived. They then go inside Ken's art gallery of a house, and Columbo starts speculating on how one writing partner would be able to profit on the other partner's death. An insurance policy, for instance. Ken then explains a second time that he immediately saw Jim's body and then called the police, at which point Columbo points out that Ken apparently spared some time to grab his mail and open it too. Later on, Ken is leaving a play when the convenience store owner from earlier, Lily, shows up and quietly insinuates that she knows something about Jim's murder. Over strawberries, she explains that she saw Jim with Ken by the lake, but she's willing to forget what she saw in exchange for $15,000, and perhaps some more flirting. After that, Columbo catches up with Ken again and brings up the fact that a call was placed from Ken's cabin to the Ferris home, and we now find out that this is why Ken made his call at the convenience store, to cover for Jim's call. Ken then sneaks down to San Diego to have a dinner and blackmail date with Lily, and although she's too smart to accept his invitation to go boating on the lake alone, she's unable to fend him off when he grabs a champagne bottle, knocks her out with it, and then dumps her body and the bottles in the lake anyway. The next morning, Columbo shows up at the cabin, excusing himself by saying that he's looking for a vacation spot. By this point, Ken doesn't believe him, but they talk about the landscape and the recent death, and before Columbo leaves, he mentions that he tried calling the cabin last night and didn't get any reply. He then stops by Lily's place and looks around for a bit, discovering a fallen champagne cork and a signed Mrs. Melville book which contradicted Ken's claims that he didn't know her. We then cut to Columbo working out the clues and the case details with Jim's wife. He's got a lot of circumstantial evidence, but nothing hard, and he's hoping she can give it to him. At this point, we're reminded that Jim left story ideas everywhere, In the next scene, Columbo confronts Ken with the fact that he killed Jim using one of their Melville story ideas by producing the scrap of paper the plot was written on. Now, personally, this seems pretty circumstantial too, but then you can convict someone on a ton of circumstantial evidence, which Columbo has, and for the record, the other episodes are usually a lot better about this. Final thoughts. So here's why I covered Columbo first. It's because I'm going to do what they did. Throughout these film reviews, I am going to describe the entire plot of each film, spoil every twist and every development, and in the end, I'm going to recommend that you watch all these movies anyway. Why? Because listening to me isn't the same as watching the thing itself. Because a good story can not only survive being spoiled, it can become even better. That's because you're no longer dividing your attention between the story at hand and your theories about what's coming up next. You know what's coming, so you can give your full attention to what's going on, and you can appreciate things you normally don't notice in a first viewing. Things like the completeness of the storyline, the explanations behind character actions, and the cleverness of the foreshadowing. Columbo was a murder mystery show without the mystery, and I'd say it was a better show for that fact. In the same way, this is going to be a spoiler-heavy series about classic films, and I believe you will be better able to appreciate these films because I'm not holding back. So thanks for joining me today for the review of the week, and I hope you'll join me next time as I cover the film you probably thought of first when I said the word noir.